what I have in there is that, for a newcomer, the first type of install is probably an SNO single node install. And then it looks like a 3-node install and a multi-node install could maybe take care of getting our, maybe could be a long-term pathway. And then if our goal is to get them to an opinionated Kubernetes, then supporting language and developments of language towards OpenShift, such they can understand basic Kubernetes and then the opinionation of OpenShift. And so in there, you see I have a little Kubernetes cheat sheet to get. So first, I saw this. I was also. I have a Red Hat had a little ebook that they had out, and so I copied that and put that link in. And then I got something from Datadog that had a cheat sheet. And I was just here looking at the OKD 4 documentation to try to see. So I'm also talking to a potential customer that's maybe looking at using OpenShift, and they keep saying I'm talking above their heads. I'm like, how can I? And that's a very frustrating thing. So, but that's probably a common thing to get to grow our community. And so I'm trying to, okay, what gear do I need to back down and talk to them such that they can just be more comfortable with Kubernetes and OKD and understand that we're here to help them and get away from thinking about a monolithic approach to anything. And so there you can see list known processes for Kubernetes fundamental. This is where each newcomer could maybe do this as a crowdsource activity where they can. So this is an experience that newcomers can gain and grow and become articulate, and then hopefully become self-sufficient. And there you see me talking about them in the opinionations of Edge, Microshift, Hypershift, all the opinions, being able to speak that language, because that I feel is going to be a common thing going between OKD and OpenShift, so they don't get lost. And then, that leads us to other things like operator tecton, and all the other potential things. And so this is, what I'm calling is a potential roadmap, and that I have to test out as well, because I'm probably here in number 2 of SNO installs. Oh, I thought I had numbers in there. And so I want to be able to master that, but also not lose any other newcomer, because the skills should build upon themselves. And in order for us to grow our community, the newcomers have to, I guess, be able to be articulate in these things is what I'm trying to say or prove.
Got it. Mika.
Yeah, I think this is really cool, Dwayne. And I'm happy to hear that you're kind of thinking about the full journey. How do we get from like a novice to an expert? One thing I'm curious about is, can we reuse or link to some of the like existing content? So when you say like, oh, well, we have some people who show up and they don't even know what open source is or whatever. It's like, can we link them out to like opensource.com or something, or one of the Red Hat pages that's like, what is open source, or opensource.org? And then, like similarly with the Kubernetes stuff, like, I think it's awesome that we have people coming who are like, well, I don't know what a container is, but I want to know more about this stuff. I'm wondering, could we use some of the CNCF's material to say, okay, yeah, if you want to learn about containers, you should really, follow this, tutorial path that like the CNCF has put together or something. So I'm just kind of curious if we can, in some respects, to kind of limit the amount of work that you have to do on some of these things that like people have already done. Like if we could just reuse some of that content or just link out to it or whatever.
I do find myself going out and looking at that stuff to try to make things as digestible as possible so newcomers don't get confused. Typically, like in the classroom, you tell a student to go read, but in telling your potential colleagues, they get really upset. So I'm trying to be more patient, and just, well, what is it? you do not understand, but in some circles, people don't want to even say what it is they don't understand. They just say, you're talking over me. And I was like, my God, you haven't even asked any questions, you know? And I say, well, this is in the United States, this is policy, you know? If you're going forward, this is looks like the way you're going to go forward. If a War 3 breaks out, this is it, you know? You're going to have to know this. So, but I'm trying to be as gentle as possible. But at some point, you just gotta roll as fast as you can. But I don't know. Right now, I'm just trying to be as, you know, I want to bring a crew of people in, and because I'm also seeing hundreds of millions of dollars of 100 startup companies starting cloud stuff, and I'm like, how are they doing that? I'm sure they're having the same challenges, you know, because things are moving so fast. And the thing in here that I didn't put in is, what is our target? Do we want to do Kubernetes 1.2.5, 1.2.4, 1.2.3? What is, you know, because it is a little bit of a moving target, but I'm like, I haven't even got there yet, you know? And but those are some questions I wanted to ask everybody. Okay, what's my target for them to, I'm trying to get people to move faster and think faster, but they say I'm moving at the speed of light, but I said, I'm not even going fast enough yet.
Well, I mean,
Well,
like,
it's-
interestingly
yeah.
enough, I think you're running into a problem that a lot of people run into when they talk about this technology. Like, anecdotally speaking, you know, I've heard from sales associates who are trying to sell OpenShift, you know, who run into the same type of problems that you're describing, where it's like, you know, Kubernetes is moving at like the speed of light, and a lot of people who see this technology and hear about the buzz around it and want to be part of it, you know, there's a lot of catch up that has to be done to get there. So I think, like, my point was mainly like, you know, I think it's awesome that you're considering all these things and you're kind of taking a wide look at it. I just want to make sure that we're not like overloading you with like rewriting content that might have already been written. So I just want to say, like, hopefully, yeah, we can add our editorial, but like, hopefully we're also linking out to kind of well-known places where people could learn this stuff. But I get you in a live situation. You can't be like, well, go read this webpage and then come back to me in 15
Yeah.
minutes and we'll have a
You need
conversation.
elevator pitches. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, so we know what the status of that is. Let's be mindful of time and move on. Tecton installation, based on the new information, I'm reworking a couple pieces of that documentation. Product documentation, we don't have any news on product documentation, and I don't see that Michael is here today. I have a question that's relevant, I think, to supporting our community, and I put this as an agenda item. Does anyone know where the must gather tutorial video is? Because I reached out to Vadim and I said, let's make one. He's like, well, I thought we already did. Does anyone
That was
remember
kind of on
this?
me. I was just going to dig up the link to that because I had proposed that as a suggestion.
Did it actually
and then
get
I had never come
created?
back to it. So we had talked about it back in September.
Yeah.
And I had never come back to it. So, like, honestly, like, I'm really game to make that video. We just I need to put together a script and kind of come back to it, you know. But yeah,
Okay.
like, we
Because
should
to
make
me,
it.
yeah, because that's what I'm seeing, and particularly in Slack, is a lot of folks are, well, first off, they're not knowing to provide a must gather, but if they, once they get the must gather, if they knew how to dig into it themselves, and if those of us in the community that are trying to support other users, like I've poked through a must gather, but I don't have the intuition to know, oh, I should go to this area here in the must gather to really, you know, based on what the person said, find out what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't have that
no,
level
like,
of knowledge yet.
yeah, like, I'm super excited to do a video about this. I mean, I've written tools that process must gathers and stuff like that. So, like, I'm keen to do this one. It had kind of slipped through my plans and whatnot. So, like,
Okay.
I put a note in here with a link to the discussion comment that I had made about it. But
Okay.
yeah, I guess the question I have is, like, Diane had been arranging these things in the past. Like, what is the best format to do that now? Like, you know, because we had done like a live presentation with her, and then she had kept the recording and then hacked it up a little bit to put the bumpers.
Yeah, so here's what we can do, and I think it's the most efficient, which is folks can record themselves doing their presentations just to make sure you get it right. If you mess up and you want something edited, just make a note of the timestamps where you want in and out. And then just send me the video and I'll do the adding of the bumper at the beginning and the fade out at the end and all that stuff. Because I work in video a lot and happy to sort of put the front and the end, the start and the beginning on it. And if you have like a major mess up where you want like a chunk, taken out, just let me know and I can do that.
That's brilliant, Jamie. Do you have so you got software that stitches a couple of videos together as well?
Yeah, I use Final Cut Pro, so I have Pro video software. Yeah, so yep,
cool.
Anything that you want, I can put together. So if you have in and out points or multiple videos that you want assembled into one, any of that, we can do it. Just provide me clear instructions of what you want.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll take you up on that offer because I've sort of done some videos, but I was really trying with FFmpeg. Fading in and fading out. You need a bit of time.
Yeah, no. I can whip that stuff up pretty quick. So
okay, cool, good, thanks. That's good to know.
Yeah. All right, so you're on the hook, Almiko, for this must gather video.
Yeah, at the risk of signing up for more stuff. Yeah, like I
would say that's a pretty important one though, because if we could get more people taking the weight off of Vadim and off of some of the other Red Hatters who inevitably know these tools and the output well enough, then I think we can build more community knowledge. I can tell someone who can tell someone who can tell someone. Yeah,
absolutely. And that was the whole point on doing the debugging one. We just kind of lost some steam there. So yeah, let's get it back and get back to it. I'll try to work up something the next couple of weeks and send it to you.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, email hosting. So we have confirmed that the aliases are working. The question now is, and we can do this asynchronously or synchronously, where are all the places where we need to notate an email and which one of the aliases, right? So the website may be info, and maybe, we've got, here I can pull up the list here. But what are some places, maybe add them to the notes of places where you think we should have our email prominently featured. And just to remind people, I'll put it in the notes again, what the aliases are.
I guess like what is our expectation on contact from the community through the email addresses?
I like expectation of like time wise, like 48 hours.
Well, no, like, so I know we have these different like community dev, like obviously like, that's like a mailing list that people should interact with. But when we say like broadcasting, like emails for like, info, security, chairs, like, well, we know like what security is. Like we want people to send us security, when they have problems there. So that kind of tells us a little bit about where we need to advertise that. But then like info and chairs and contributors, like what is our expectation for people sending email to those addresses?
So chairs is stuff. Chairs came up as a way to reach out to the chairs for anything working group related that someone may want to, and this is all hypothetical, and it's not happened anytime that I've been involved with the working group, but let's say you're having an issue that you need resolved in terms of interactions, or you feel uncomfortable in the community due to something, or there's some sort of communication you need to have with the leadership of the working group, right? So that's what that one was about. Info was like sort of the catch-all for anything that doesn't fit into it, or someone wants info about OKD in general, something like that. Yeah, sorry, I should have maybe not modified these as a list, but I can rework that to be like a table. Yeah.
Jamie, I was going to say, would it be easier though just to put a link to OKD.io and have a contact page there where we list the emails and their uses. So it's obvious that if you want to do it for this function, this is how you contact us. And that way, if we want to change the emails or add new ones, we don't have to do it everywhere. We're just going to change the one contact page.
Sure.
And then everywhere we socialize, so on the Twitter, we'll have the OKD.io contact us page, and everywhere we just put that link in, and then we've got one place to maintain it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, let's create
that's kind of what I was thinking too, Brian. Like, part of the reason for capturing this is, yeah, like, you know, as I'm thinking, because I've been looking at this social media doc page, and it's like, yeah, like having a one-stop page for all of our communications where it just says like, yeah, how to use the stuff. And then, yeah, we just blast the link.
Yeah, perfect. Let's see, so we'll say make page. And who wants to take the initiative on making that web page?
Well, I will certainly add this information into the social media page that I'm working on, because what I was trying to do is put together a page that covered all of our communications. So like, I will add this into the section on email addresses, but I don't know if that's like the same page that you're talking about here.
I don't know. What would we call the page that has everything, like contact or communicate or communications, or what would we want to call that? Brian, you had the suggestion. Did you have anything in mind for a page name?
I mean, there is the, let me just paste it. There is the help page on the community at the minute, and that probably needs a little bit of an update, a little bit of a refactoring. But that would be the one-stop shop. If you need help, put everything on that page. Or we could create a contact us page.
I like contact us personally, just because it's very specific. Like, maybe someone's like, well, I don't need help, I just want to tell you about something, or something like that, you know, or let you know about an event where OKD could participate, or, you know, the OKD community could participate, or something like that. I don't know. What do other people think?
I think it's a good start at the very least, you know, why not?
All right.
Well, I'll create the page, and then people can go in and modify it and add stuff as they feel. But I'll create the skeleton.
All right. Fantastic. All right, social media doc, how's that coming along?
I mean, slowly, but I guess like what I'll do is I'll draft off of what Brian is doing here. So as Brian makes the contact us page, maybe instead of trying to doing the social media doc as like a whole shot, I could just try and put up sections as individual PRs. And then, you know, I did that. The real question is like, so contact us is about telling people how to get in touch with us. The social media stuff is going to be more like a communications kind of thing. So I wonder, like, is there a relation between those two pages, or should we try to build a relation between them?
I guess, is it community member instructions, or how is it the sort of the rules for using social media as a community, or is it how to configure and get on board with it, or is it a bit of everything?
I mean, so the initial work that I was trying to do was just capture what our current communications pathways are, right? So like the Twitter, the website, the mailing addresses, you know, just the basic stuff. And then my hope was, I guess my intention for the future, assuming the community kind of like agrees on it, is that we would start to build that doc out as we started to create these guidelines. So the notion of like, okay, here's how you get in touch with us, and then here are our guidelines for communication. So when we say we have a Twitter account and we have a Mastodon account, okay, well, what do we use those for? Here's like the guidelines, so that, you know, if we ever have to get into a situation where maybe we want someone else to do communications, or like someone else is going to run the Twitter account, or Jamie's going out of town for a month or something. We have some nice, well-founded community guidelines for what we kind of consider acceptable, media to go out on those channels. So my hope was we could get to that point where we're describing like what we almost like our code of conduct for how we communicate with people. But initially, I was just going to try to capture kind of the communication pathways we have, so that as we build the next part, we could have a more democratic kind of way to put it together or whatever. So that was what I was thinking initially.
Yeah, because I think when we discussed emails, it was thought that this was when you didn't want communication in the public domain, but where it's like you're asking for help and other people could benefit from seeing the open discussion, we'd use the social media channels. So I think information like that, where what is useful, when should we use an email versus a Twitter or a Slack, I think that's because what we don't want to do is what we saw with the other channels, where one person would get frustrated, they didn't get a response within 10 minutes, and they spam the same message to every possible channel.
That's right.
We want to try and avoid that. So we want some clear guidelines. If you're asking for help, other people could have the same problem. So it goes in the Slack channel. If you want to raise a concern about an abusive member of the community, that's a more confidential discussion. So you do that in an email. So,
yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. So maybe it would be a separate page then. Maybe we'll put up the contact us for now. And then I'll make this other one as like a communications page where we can get deeper into a discussion of kind of the guidelines and whatnot around it.
I think that's good, because then you can say, okay, here's Slack, here are, here are the expectations for it. Here is, the whatever, the mailing list. This is our expectations for it, etc. Yeah. And refer back
and
to
we could cross-link to like code of conduct and stuff like that.
Code of conduct, right? Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I want to add something. I want to bounce back before we move forward, because this, I forgot to add it. Someone pointed out that the AWS, someone on Slack pointed out that the AWS IPI default deployment guide is actually lists the wrong instance types. So for stuff like that, I don't know. We determined that we don't have the names of the people stored in here in any way that were the original authors, do we? Like, we didn't even add any like metadata tags or anything that say who the authors were. So I don't know who wrote the IPI, the AWS.
We did
IPI
in the original guide, but the IPI stuff was all from me originally.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know exactly what the problem is. AWS changed some of their instance names, and we changed, AWS changed some of the default instance types, and we pushed into those, as well.
Sure.
So yeah,
because it's M6, it's M6I extra large is the current type that IPI gets installed with by default. And this is M4
is that in
extra large.
Is that in the product documentation, or is that in one of our?
That's in one of ours. That's one of our guides. It's the AWS IPI default deployment guide under guides.
Okay.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I mean, those are small changes. Other than that, it's probably pretty, I'm assuming pretty accurate, right? You just listed what people need, to get started. So I think just a small change like that.
Yeah, I just kind of took inventories of like what was produced by those things. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Just to bring I asked them to put in a ticket. I don't know if they did or not.
I haven't seen one.
I didn't see anything come in. So, all right. So we went through that. Next up is I added volunteer tracking. Do we have any? So we have an item to reach out and get volunteers, but we haven't defined a way to actually notate who our volunteers are, because there was one person a couple of weeks ago who volunteered that wanted to do tech stuff. And then we've had other people volunteer for documentation. I don't think we've ever created something that we can actually track our volunteers in, have we?
I'd like to turn that into a different question.
Sure.
how do we run projects within the community? And I was going to bring this up in the operator catalog, because I mean, it's okay saying that someone wants to volunteer, but ideally we want people working within the community to actually move things on. And often there may be one or two people who want to collaborate on something. I don't think we've got a way of how do we get together and do little subgroups, and how do we actually run projects as a community to come up? Because up to now, we tend to say, oh, I'll do that. And we go off and we do it on our own. And eventually, when time permits, we sort of, it's finished. Yeah. But for other things, we don't seem to have a way of saying who wants to work on this and how do we actually organize these sort of like sub communities or sub work groups. And I think that goes hand in hand with this. So when someone says, I want to volunteer, it'd be much easier if we could say, go and work with Dwayne and Miko or Luigi and go and do the SNO guide, for example. It's rather than someone says, I'll volunteer, and we just like fire them off, say, go do that without sort of any support. It's like we sort of hang them out to dry a bit. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And Miko, was it you who was talking about a Fedora-like process of people attaining new levels, basically, of within the working group, like levels of participation, I guess you would call it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of us trying to draft off Fedora where possible. I mean, we're nowhere near the size of Fedora yet, but I think that what Brian's talking about is yeah, it's super poignant, right? Because if we get together once every 2 weeks as a community and there's excitement there, and I say, hey, I want to try out this feature, and and then like maybe Dwayne and a couple other people are like, hey, I want to join you and help out. Like, how do we do that, right? Like, we need a way to say, okay, we're going to set up a 30-minute meeting that happens at a different time, and this is how this group will meet here. And like, because I agree, like when I look at how I participate in like, the Kubernetes community or other open source communities or even Fedora, yeah, the larger communities, this becomes a problem where you have to define, like, what is a working group? What is a special interest group? Like, how do we define how that group gets together and does their work and then leaves? I think it's good that we're talking about this now. I think as the pipeline work becomes more prominent, it's going to be even better, right? Because like, we'll want a way to organize around how, like, if I want to do a full-throated experiment, right? And there are people who are going to work with me, we might want to engage the pipeline to do like custom builds and whatnot. And so, yeah, like, I think it's good for us to talk about this stuff. Like, I don't really have a strong feeling for how, like, how opinionated we should be about forming groups and whatnot, but I think it's a good discussion to have.
I mean, well, the example I was going to talk about is the catalog project. So I've been doing some work, and you realize it's too big for one person. One person's not going to go and create the OKD catalog. So how do we actually do that? Now, I know things often happen within Red Hat, and you go off and you do you have your internal meetings, but how do we bring the community into that? How do we actually say, who's interested in doing catalogs, and let's do some work each week to move the project forward? And how do we collaborate? And I'm not saying that it has to be super structured and that we have to go and create and create sort of articles of association and whatever to get a group up and running. It's just, how do we actually say, let's go and work together on this? And we don't seem to have any mechanisms to do that, formally or informally. So it was more along those lines.
Brian, sorry, Jamie.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to suggest, could we not track on GitHub, just like we'll have a project and we just say, okay, on this project, Luigi, Dwayne, and so on will be working on this, and as a community, you're welcome just to have it's not it's like just a framework of a suggestion, really, and these are the contact people, and knock yourselves out, put your name down and help out.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to say, is that, so for example, the Open GitOps group, they create teams within GitHub right? And so you create a GitHub team for a particular project, and then that way you know who's in it, and people can know who they need to communicate with and whatever. So I think that might be the first start, is like create a team. For folks that aren't familiar, here are our teams for this group. And actually, I'll put it in the notes as well. So every GitHub org has teams, and let me volunteer tracking. Also change this to volunteer participation. I put it in the notes. So I would think that one of the first things that we can do is, I mean, let's create a list of like maybe 5 things, and I think one of the first things in that list would be to create a team for whoever wants to be interested in whatever particular project. Because some projects are going to require a repo, others are not, you know, they might be using other types of resources. So does that feel right? Does that seem right? As like step number 1 for a thing that people want to, an idea or a task that people want to coalesce around?
Yeah, I think it looks good. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the guys, but at least it's something, and something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And we can always elaborate on it as we go on, you know.
I apologize, Jamie, but like, of course, like my test binged and someone started pinging me on chat, like right as you were saying that. Could you just kind of repeat in brief, or I guess you're typing
Sure.
it in now. So
Sure. So GitHub teams, that would be like step number 1 is create a GitHub team for an idea or a concept that people wanted to participate or throw out as something, you know. We could
how lightweight are the teams? That's my only question, is like when we talk about creating a team, it's like now there's a little bit of process involved there. Someone has to like do something with GitHub, and I would want to, I think like, and not to be too much of an a-hole here or whatever, but like, and I know we're small, but like before we get to the point of doing stuff like creating infrastructure or doing things like that, I think groups should have to come with like a definition of like what they're going to do. What are they trying to accomplish? When will we know it's done? Those kind of things. Because what I would hate to see is people kind of like getting all excited about topics, and they're like, we need like umpteen billion, you know, GitHub teams so that everyone can be working on their project. And then we look at it 6 months later and like, you know, 3 of those people are still doing stuff. So I just want to make sure that like we make people kind of buy into like, if we're going to make a GitHub team to do something, we should have a little bit of definition around like, what are we doing? How will we know when it's done? You know, those kind of things. So that would be my only pushback on that.
Okay. Is it too much to ask folks to write a synopsis? I know, Brian, you said you don't want them to write a treatise, but if just a paragraph of this is what we plan to do and these are the people who are involved, or people who want to be involved, what would we want as some sort of defining thing from the people who are interested?
I mean, I would say a ticket on the planning board would be a good place to start.
Sure. Okay.
Just try and get it into lightweight, but try and get us to start using tools. So if you put a ticket on the planning board, and then just guidelines of like, we don't want to clutter up the OKD GitHub space with hundreds of hello world. We started an idea, but it went nowhere. So when do we, I mean, because I've started doing the catalog stuff in my own Git repo, my personal space. And I've got to the point where it would be quite nice to start collaborating with people. And it's like, well, how do we do this? And do I put something in a Slack, in this meeting? Do I, how do I actually invite people in to collaborate? And it's just things like that, because we have none of this. We have no sort of prior sort of examples of how this community works or how we want it to work. So it's just thinking that. And I think less is more in this case, the lighter weight, and get people to actually do what they want to do rather than process. If we get to the point where a community of 1,000 members, we'll need some process, but we're not. So
Okay. Any thoughts from anyone else? Yeah.
So Brian, so go ahead and add a task for the operator thingy. I certainly would like to get involved. No, honestly, I would like to get involved and see how we can help. I mean, it is, you're right, it's massive. And we need lots of people involved. So if you put that down, I'll certainly do my best to get involved with it.
Yeah, so I mean, I actually have a catalog and I can actually load operators into my OKD. So I've got that far, but it's then just working out. And there's a whole, I mean, I'll just put a link in there. If you go to the catalog operator page at the bottom, there's a whole lot of questions. And I am looking for some friendly Red Hatters to answer some of them, because it's about how does PROW work? And because, I mean, when I look at this, we shouldn't have to invent the wheel. Red Hat does this already. So we shouldn't have to invent anything. It should all be there, but it's just like trying to find the needle in the haystack in terms of the magic secret sauce.
Yeah, exactly. We have a thing called CPAS, and it is a monster of a thing. We built, so they're basically the operators that we built and created from scratch in our team. Because they're out of payload, they're the day 2 type operators. They're not core. So we use this CPAS build, and there's so many moving parts. There's like a thing called Honey Badger, and there's this. It is massively intense and involved, and the flow is not easy. So in order to simplify things, we've I don't know if we can even use that internally, and maybe even try and clone it. I don't know. It's something I can find out, but it is very, very involved. So if we could simplify things, it would be much easier, and get the community to also help and be involved in that would be great.
All right, sounds like we've got a project coalescing. So do we want to say that we create a project board item in the person's name, or we have them create it? Very basic question right there. Do we want to create it in, someone comes to us with an idea, do we say, we'll create a project board item ticket, or do we give them so that they can create one?
I mean, I think that this comes to the crux of it. We have no governance of our GitHub organization in terms of who gets, and I think it comes to Almiko's idea of we have levels of members. So somebody walking in off the street shouldn't be able to go and trash our GitHub space. But if you're a member that's been coming to meetings or working with the group, then you shouldn't have to ask to do everything. You should be given a level of trust and permission that you can start doing things yourself. But obviously then to commit things like a version of OKD or the pipeline stuff that's been going, we want you to be a more trusted member. So I think we have to have that level. But again, just little things like that, thinking how that should work. We don't really have those in place.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll link you to how the Open GitOps Working Group does it, because they've got maintainers. So if you're a maintainer status, you're someone that's given rights to like approve merge requests on the website, or a majority of maintainers are a positive vote are required for a governance item to pass and things like that. So that might be a way that in which we can do this, and it'll solve that issue of, in the working group charter, we had things like, well, majority vote. So can someone show up to vote but never have participated in like actually doing stuff for the project and have a stake in it, right? You know, so I think this answers a lot of that stuff. So can we agree to maybe collect examples? I can get stuff from Open GitOps for us to look at to get a sense of what other groups are doing. Does someone know of any other groups they'd want to reach out to see what they do? And Almiko, I see your hand up if you want to go ahead.
I was responding to something else. I don't have a group that I mean, I probably could if I could think about it, but like, I just wanted to say that like, I totally agree with what Brian's putting forth here in terms of like, we should be using the Jira discussion, whatever board on GitHub, like we should focus activity there. I think it's awesome to have the people who are generating a working group or generating a project, like they should open a card there, and then the project maintainers can then, like, you know, we can make decisions as a community to say, okay, we've got a card here that someone has created in the to-do list, and it's about, you know, Brian Innes wants to make a new operator catalog, right? And so like, then we can say, all right, people should put their names on that card if they want to help out with Brian. And I think we as a group think this is good, so we're going to move it to the in progress category or something, right? Or, you know, like I think organizing around that is perfect, because now we have like a way to kind of capture all this in history. We have a way to point, even though we don't have governance for right now about how this stuff should be done, we're still gating it through the project like maintainers and whatnot, which I think is a good idea. So that was just kind of my thought.
No, that's good. And that actually jumps to something else in terms of like meeting process. Diane and I kind of moved away from what the meetings used to be like, which was she would literally bring up project board and just be bouncing around all over it. Do we want to go back? And I asked this last year when we first got the project board up. Do we want to go back towards meetings being going through project board stuff, or does that make it too dry and too sort of mechanical versus sort of our more discussion based, and then we throw stuff into the HackMD, or is there something in between? What are folks feeling?
I think we could use the main meeting as a discussion meeting, and maybe use this one more as a community, how we move community projects forward.
So actually focus on looking at the board and the meeting process be going through the board. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the main meeting, more of the discussion, what's going on and what's important to look at. So that's more of a conversational meeting. This one, I think, should be about community projects, and whether it's documentation, we can all add an item and track them. Because I'm also aware that there's things that we drop and we maybe shouldn't drop because there's no one immediately interesting, but there's still things that need to be done, and they sort of slide off the agenda, and then we come back to them 4 months later thinking, yeah, we talked about that, and sort of vanished, and then but we really need to get onto that. So
yeah, that's true. And then we can, when people say, I want to volunteer, but I don't know where, then we can say, well, here's the board. Here's things that are pending or things that could use some people. I like it. All right. Well, then expect that the next meeting to be more focused on the board directly.
Yeah, I mean, my caution about running the meeting around the board, because, you know, I have a few of those already, that like meetings that run around Jira boards, is like, the question I would ask is, does our board change enough on a week-to-week basis that like having that conversation is going to be interesting right now? I think in the future we might get to that point, but like so for example, I'm subscribed to everything that comes in the OKD project organization. So like, I don't necessarily review everything, but I'm just kind of like watching what's going on there. And like, it seems like if we were to talk about the activity that's happening in the project right now, we would probably be spending most of our meetings talking about the work that like Luigi's group is doing around the pipeline. Because you just see like tons of activity happening around fixing the pipeline and bugs going in and stuff getting done there. So like, you know, kudos to Luigi and Christian and Vadim. Like there's a lot of activity going on there. But does that relate to the cards that we actually have on the board in GitHub? Like, I'm not so sure, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they're using the planning, but I mean, if we look at the email activity that we've just gone through, none of that went in planning. So that was purely in our agenda notes, and maybe that should have been on the board as a way of tracking the progress of that activity. So I think we can make it what we want to make it. And I think the cautionary tale is that we don't want to be discussing one bug request or one feature request. I think the board should be more about projects than actual implementation details within a project, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, if we get to that point where we want to have a meeting focused around like a specific planning board, we should probably have a planning board that's like related to that meeting then, right? So we know that like when we get to the end of a meeting, we can say, we can clear these cards off, or this card needs to stay because we're going to talk about it next week or whatever. So like, that would just be my caution, is that it sucks to get into a meeting and it's like, well, here's this card that's been there for 12 months now. And it's like, it's still at the top of the, it's like, all right,
Right.
what are we doing here?
Right, exactly. All right, we've got about 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we cover everything that we have here. Prioritization operators. So we know that folks are all working on operator stuff. I'll be going again this Thursday for the Tecton Operator Working Group. And obviously we've got the operators catalog stuff that Brian is working on, and we'll get an item created for that on the board. Anything else in terms of the operator stuff that we can do right now?
I mean, sorry, Glenn, go ahead.
Oh, I was thinking that with everything we're doing, that there's still a great opportunity to take stuff and build into the glossary. So when the operators are going, there's an opportunity to also define prerequisites for people for a certain threshold that people need to be proficient in operators. So there's a lot of operator terms that would fit in. Same thing for pipelines, and that's the way we can maybe build our newcomers up so that they can be proficient. But that may be, you may need to generate a special list of maintainers to capture that long term. But I'll do my best until then.
Yeah. Just grab what resources you can find online that do a good job of explaining operators, and collate them into like a set of links or something like that. Like Almika was saying, we don't want you to spend a lot of time rewriting stuff that's already out there. But if you can find what's out there, that's the easiest, that's the best, how can I say this, the most well-written to help people understand operators, then I think that puts us ahead of the game for sure.
So Jamie, if you're in your Tecton meeting, find out how they create the catalog index of operator bundles for Tecton, because that repo is horrible.
Yeah.
It's the same as the Knative one. It uses the Google's internal process of how they used to build things, and it's different from every other operator catalog.
Yeah. So, and like I said, they are reworking stuff over the next couple months. They're completely redoing, their repos and stuff like that. And so we may have an opportunity to say, hey, here's a community organization a community group that wants to help and support you getting this out. Here are some suggestions that would allow us as volunteers to contribute more to the project and to utilize the operator more in OKD for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. I will do that. All right. We have 5 more minutes. Is there anything else that folks wanted to touch on? I want to make sure everyone had a chance to speak about anything that's on their mind in terms of community development.
Yeah, I'm not sure about community development, but did you receive my email last week?
I did, Jack. I'm doing social media stuff today. Sorry.
All right. Okay. No, just wanted to make sure that I didn't send it to Dev Null.
No. Sorry, I didn't. I was out of the office, so to speak.
All right. Okay. No worries.
Since Friday. So, but yes, I have it, and I will be posting social media stuff and the meeting videos and all that stuff today.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah. Jack, do you want to let folks here know, and just so that they can share with people as well?
Yeah, sure. So basically 2 days, like on Thursday, I'll be at the Kubernetes Community Days in Amsterdam, which is like a smaller scale, similar to KubeCon, but it's more focused on actual community. So I think there are maybe going to be like 400 or 500 people there at most. And basically, I'll be presenting how we're using Kubernetes and also OKD here at CERN. So like what the different use cases are and why we as the IT department, why we're offering both services and what kind of the benefits of each are. And then also going into a bit of the, let's say, architectural details of like what we deploy on OKD and how we kind of enhance it with our own things. Yeah, so previously I saw that the event was supposed to be hybrid, but I think they changed now to in person. But I guess eventually the videos are gonna make it online.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, excellent. And yeah, I'll send something out, and as soon as the video is posted, let us know, and we'll make sure that we link to it and get that out to people.
Will do.
Well. And good
Thanks.
luck. Good luck on your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Any last thoughts? All right. Well, thanks so much, folks, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.